Dr. Sabrina Siegel with the Neuroscience Education Institute, and twice a month, I sit down with a renowned mental health care expert to discuss breakthroughs and best practices for treating patients with mental illness. In this episode of the NEI podcast, I have the privilege of interviewing Dr. Mona Masood, general adult psychiatrist practicing in the greater Philadelphia area. And we are talking about a very important topic, mental health in the Muslim American community. Welcome, Dr. Masood.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Masood, my first question is, how does stigma about mental health problems uniquely impact the Muslim American community?
So the thing about any particular community, and especially the Muslim American community, is that we have the intersection of multiple variables that go into how people view mental health. And for Muslims, we'll have not only the religious component, we'll have the cultural component, because this is a religion of 1.3 billion people from around the globe. So they are having their own individual cultural, sociocultural component as well. And then add on top of that, they are also having to navigate being an American citizen.
Right.
So there are so many different intersections here that it makes it very complicated when it comes to psychological well-being.
Right. Absolutely. What are some of the difficulties that Muslim Americans face today, and what was the reason behind the creation of the Muslim Wellness Foundation?
So when it comes to talking about Islam in America or Muslims in America, it is very important to note that the first Muslim Americans were actually African slaves. When they had come over here into the United States, or were actually brought over here during the slave trade, they were practicing their faiths, but then over time, there was a loss of that identity forced out of this whole issue of having to homogenize the population of slaves in order for them to have their primary identity not be what or who they were or what they identified as, but being their identity as being slaves. And so we went from that to this evolving presence of immigrant Muslims into the country from different places due to either job opportunities or other various reasons of the American dream, as it were. And that kind of happened probably more robustly in the 1950s to the present. And when we're talking about immigrant Muslims, we're talking about Muslims that are coming from the Indian subcontinent, which is where my parents came over from, and then also immigrant Muslims that are coming from the Middle East, as well as the African nations. So we have such a kind of diversity of all of these different experiences and practices within this framework of religion. And then we're all brought into America and we're all having to interact with one another together. So that also creates a new identity in itself. And then we have this Muslim Wellness Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that was created in order to do advocacy work and educational work to bring to light different mental health concerns within the Muslim community. It was actually founded by Dr. Kamila Rashad, who is a clinical psychologist in the Philadelphia area. And she is African American by her heritage, and she is also a Muslim. And for us, what is unique, again, about doing this kind of work, though it is a national organization and it is for the purpose of Muslim mental health nationwide, because we are located in Philadelphia, we are also serving immediately the Philadelphia Muslim community, which has a very large, predominantly Black Muslim population.
What are unique challenges to Black Muslim Americans? Can you share a little bit more about what psychosocial issues this community faces?
Sure, absolutely. There's quite a bit of unique challenges. As I was discussing before, immigrant Muslims come with their own cultural baggage, and that is very different in terms of the way that they identify as Americans, the way they identify as Muslims, and even their experiences in America. And what that means is that even though we are a minority ourselves, oftentimes immigrant Muslims come to the United States with already preconceived notions about Black Muslims and specifically just Black Americans, which are very complicit in the ideas of like prejudice and stereotypes of all the things that America's own legacy with race has been. And so when it comes to being Black and Muslim in the United States, often what we'll find is a big disconnect between these two communities, the immigrant Muslim communities and the Black Muslim communities, because Black Muslims are generally, and this is not all, but Black Muslims generally in the United States are generations of Muslims who have either their family member, ancestor has converted to Islam at some point, or they are also descendants of Muslim slaves, or they are descendants of different Black or African nations that have immigrated to the United States. And now they are, multi-generational. And that comes with its own kind of unique challenges. I think as we ourselves continue to navigate in our country, kind of the different racial diaspora and the different racial conflicts that continue to target our Black community, having that intersection of being Black and Muslim is especially challenging because there's an isolation that is often felt where Black Muslims are not necessarily felt completely a part of their Black Christian community, and they're not feeling very much embraced by their immigrant Muslim community. So they're having to find their own identity.
Wow. I think it's great that you really explained that situation for us, because it does seem so complicated, that it's multifaceted and there's many different components involved with that. And I could see how that could very dramatically impact mental health in particular. What about female Muslim Americans? What sorts of challenges do they face?
Sure. And so with women in America and Muslim women in America, we have, again, that intersection at play of our cultural backgrounds. And each country has such different cultural norms and behaviors surrounding women and femininity and identity and all of these kind of things that they are most of the time having to navigate that rather than the aspect of being a Muslim woman. What I mean by that is there are very particular, I would say actually, liberties that are almost by law in our religion for what women have rights, and we have very specific rights regarding money, regarding our own well-being, regarding working, regarding if we want to have families or not. And these are actually, for us, from a religious perspective, it's very empowering. However, what we find, and this is kind of the common thing you'll find when you're speaking to Muslim women, is that when we add the extra layer of the culture that we're from, that we will find that there is a patriarchal overtone that was never meant to be in the faith, but became a part of it as a way of establishing a power dynamic in the cultures we left behind. And so when it comes to the common tropes we see about Muslim women in the media, where, this person was told to cover, or this person was told to marry so-and-so, or not go out, or not have a job, those things are coming from a toxic patriarchal structure that is not inherent in the religion or the jurisprudence of the religion. It is inherent in the cultural norms that the person is from. And the beauty of being a Muslim, a woman in America, is that we are able to have more of a say on how we practice our religion. In the end, we are individuals navigating our faith, and Muslim women, not one looks like another. For me, I have chosen to wear the scarf, for example, And that was a personal choice I made when most of my family actually the women in my family did not wear it. And for others, they choose not to wear it. But the key word in all of this is that it is a choice. Right. And that empowerment we feel of being Muslim women in America is something that we find unique to being in this country. The challenges that I think that you were mentioning, the challenges that we feel that we're facing in this country are very much that our fellow citizens, our fellow Americans, tend to have a preconceived notion or a projection of who we are. And so we'll kind of put that on us and will kind of then put us in the defensive of having to, we're guilty until proven innocent, that we're not this, we're not oppressed, we don't need somebody to save us. All of these kind of tropes that happen, which in a way are kind of just reinforcing the same patriarchal issues that we were dealing with in our other countries too, where people think they know what we need.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Can you tell us what the Coping with Community Trauma Project is and how did that come about?
Yeah. So the Coping with Community, again, this is a brainchild of our founder, Dr. Kamila Rashad. And we as board members are banding together to create these projects. So community trauma, specifically in this instance, is referring to Black community trauma, where we are seeing with what is going on with either police brutality or protesting or the situation with the existence of being Black in America. It's specifically centered on the very real trauma that Black families face. And it's a network. It's a way of embracing one another in this time to show that we will be there for one another. It is not an individual. You don't have to live like this individually. There's power in numbers. And just by calling it trauma and calling it what it is, there is that implicit permission that the other person who is experiencing the trauma knows that other people are normalizing it, meaning they are also agreeing with them what they have experienced is real. And so in that, people feel empowered. We don't feel so isolated. We feel like there are people who understand us.
Could you tell us more about the Black Muslim Psychology Conference?
Absolutely. And so just to reiterate to all of our listeners, I myself am not Black. I'm not a Black Muslim, but I have been very heavily involved in this particular conference. And what it is that it unapologetically centers Black Muslim voices in terms of academics, in terms of education, in terms of public speaking and activism of Black Muslim experience in America. And the psychology that goes behind it that has been inherently limiting Black Muslims from having that kind of sacred space of upliftment and validation of their accomplishments. And so this is an annual conference. I believe that we have now done 5 years, and this year it might be virtual due to COVID. Right. But with this conference specifically, we invite speakers that are pioneers and leaders in their fields who have focused their energy and their work around the Black Muslim experience. And they come in and they share their data, their results, their panels, discussions on navigating so many different parts of their identities, whether it is Black Muslims in the academic fields, Black Muslims as activism, Black Muslims in terms of teachers and professors or physicians or psychiatrists, and of course, religious scholars. And so there's so many voices and so many ways of intelligence and services that come together in these conferences that really give a safe space and upliftment to the Black Muslim community.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What is the Deeply Rooted Project? And can you tell us more about all that this program encompasses?
Mm-hmm. So the Deeply Rooted Project, we specifically call it DREL, which is a Deeply Rooted Emerging Leaders Project. And what that means is that we focus our energy and our mentorship around Black Muslim youth, ones who are already in college, who are already kind of leaders in their student groups and organizations, who have very clear goals and missions. And by providing them the appropriate mentorship from various adult leaders who have already accomplished so much, we're able to kind of allow them to achieve those successes. It really is a networking project where it is the year long. They're part of a fellowship, really, and they get to know one another. They get to have retreats. In the retreats, they learn from one another. They support one another. They share their vulnerabilities. There's therapeutic alliances there and therapeutic rapport. And then they also meet with these pioneers and leaders in the Black Muslim community, as well as other Muslim communities, who are able to kind of hold their hand, be available for them, even past their fellowship, to achieve these amazing goals.
Wow, that is so inspirational. I think that's wonderful. What are some resources that can help Muslim Americans to improve mental health and allow well-being to thrive?
So one of the resources that comes to mind is the Muslim Wellness Foundation. One of our big goals is to educate our clergy, our imams, our religious institutions on mental health. Because as we were discussing, you and I, Sabrina, the stigma of mental health is so intersectional. It has so many different layers. But in the end, it is very much pushed aside. It is seen often as a weakness of faith, which is often what it is in many religions, where, you know, if you pray more, you'd be better. Or if you did this more, then you would feel better. And all of these kind of well-intentioned, but honestly missing the mark of what is truly mental health. And so what we do as part of a Muslim Wellness Foundation is we go out into the communities, we hold educational events to just talk about, you know, what is depression? What is anxiety? What is trauma? What does it mean to heal? What does it mean to process things and to work through things? And all of those kind of things. So we do educational seminars, but we also go in and we teach our religious institutions, because they tend to be where it's the first point of contact for a lot of our members of our religious community in terms of mental health issues. They won't call it mental health issues. They'll just say, you know, oh yeah, you know, he started, like my son started failing out. Oh, he's addicted to this, or he's struggling with that, or, you know, he's having some sort of identity crisis. All of these kind of things, they'll take them to our faith leaders. And we are not trying to dismiss that. We know it's a very big part of the way that we heal and the way that we trust within the community is to trust in our faith. So instead of taking away that resource, we want to educate that resource, our clergy, on how to appropriately answer those questions, how to direct their congregation to appropriate resources, how to destigmatize mental health themselves through their words, through their actions.
Right. Wow. That's wonderful. So that leads me to my final question, which is, how can someone get more involved in this movement?
Absolutely. So we are always looking for volunteers for Muslim Wellness Foundation. I believe that you can go to muslimwellness.com and then contact us through there in terms of what you would like to bring to the table. We want people to contribute in the way that they feel they have the most to give. If they have a crucial skill that they feel that they could contribute, we'd love to have that particular skill. So it is not just in any particular way, but you come to us, you let us know what you want to do for the Muslim community in terms of empowering them, and then we want to use your skills.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this great information, and thank you for being on our show.
Thank you again, Sabrina. It was my absolute pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you. This episode has been brought to you by the NEI Podcast. With nearly 100 episodes, you can find us on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Libsyn, and virtually any platform that you prefer to listen to podcasts. If you've enjoyed this episode, we ask that you kindly leave a review for us. Go to any of the platforms mentioned and leave a star rating or a comment. We'd love to hear from you.